We're live. I
Guys.
think we're live. Wait, hold on.
Yeah, it's just stop filming.
Hold on. Let me see. If it pops up. Oh, it actually worked.
Nothing busted.
Hold on.
This camera's not working.
Hold up. This video is restricted.
You have to sign in.
I'm already signed in. Go check your phone. Check your phone. Hold up.
I don't have data. Oh wait, what is it? Ray Jordan?
New Jersey?
I'm not subscribed.
No, bro. Come on.
It's restricted while you record.
Only.
Is it R-A-G?
I'm trying to GED.
What is that?
Oh God.
Is that your live?
I'm trying to. It's not fucking working. Hold up.
It doesn't say you're live.
Bro, come on, man. Oh, I am. Look, 3 people watching. 3 people watching. Let's go. Yo, yes sir. Yes sir. Get drunk. I'm actually live. I'm actually live.
Yeah, you have to go listen to yourself. You can't see it, but you can watch yourself. Guys, go add me on Snap, Pimpin' Bussy.
Oh God, I'm actually live. Oh shit, I'm actually live.
Cap went to the 5th grade.
They did?
Yeah, you weirdo.
Fucking dumbass nigga. Yo, go, bro. Like, oh God. Bro, look.
Oh yeah. It was on the other side.
Oh shit. Oh fuck. That's like 7 frames per second. Goddamn, nigga. That's what happens if you're streaming on this bullshit. I don't know. Oh God. Yo, I'm live. Go check it. Huh? I'm live right now.
No, Juliana, so I was passing her.
What? For real, I swear to God.
No, Juliana for her. She called me Brondon, so I called her Juliana.
Ray Georgia ain't
And
gonna
then
come?
she's like, I'm a place you don't like it. Everything she called me was like a black man. So
Bro, but like, oh my God, the streaming quality is so bad.
I was like, babe.
Go to my channel. You have to go to my channel.
But then
Right
I
there,
was
right
like,
there.
no, and she's like, I'm gonna call you pussy. And I was like, Pimpin'. Every class I had a door open.
Oh God, bro, we lit. I told you.
Wait, they can hear it?
He's watching me. They can hear us. I have AirPods. Brendan, I have AirPods.
Oh, you can't hear it?
No, bro, they can hear me. Like, this is my mic, basically.
Bro, all you hear is cheers.
Sorry, I have a USB mic. I have
Same.
headphones.
Same. Bro, do you think I'm gonna walk in with my whole mic, bro? No. No. Oh, sheesh. Bro. You're black. Yes, sir.
Peter spit.
No, I'm skating.
Oh, I'm good.
I just put my back still in that.
I'm just gonna be good.
Same.
Cadence is not here.
Bro, oh my God. Oh, shoot.
Brendan,
Oh, God, Jazzy? Yes, sir.
Where's Jazzy?
What other channel?
Eat a salad.
Oh, shoot, we could have done that for real. Yeah, he's scared of COVID too. Bro, I know the quality is fire. Oh, God.
Then how do you know he's not here yet?
Take a picture.
Oh, it's on the ground.
Can we take a picture?
Tyler, you're 40.
Yeah.
Because if she's not here, she's not here. 40. Okay, you haven't brushed your teeth in 2 weeks.
How about in this aisle?
I haven't at least in a month on like seal ships.
You're nasty.
Close on seal
Are you
ships.
serious?
Oh, God, easy.
Like everyone follows that account. Like that goes to CO, like most people do.
Everyone falls
What?
asleep.
Oh, what?
Bro,
I brushed
oh my
off the
god.
window. I brushed
Yo, this quality is fire. Oh my mama. Where is
I know
everyone?
mama called me.
Oh god.
Peter, mom
Drake,
called me.
quickly got up
throw
on
some
here.
games.
Oh,
Oh
they
no.
said them,
You know what happened? I wake up and then I fall back asleep.
Yes, I'm in class right
Look
now.
at that.
Because I
Eat a
wake
salad.
up, I get everything ready,
Eat Jazzy.
What's that?
eat it,
Eat a piece of Jazzy.
then I get two chances to just fall back down.
Dude, I was like,
You
that
be
was
full for like months.
you do that shit with mom and dad
I'm
for
ready,
life.
like, I'm ready.
They don't even have one.
Like,
It's not
I'm
something
not
about
on y'all.
Dude, for real.
Dude, I don't even know.
Eat and don't move.
How could you not be able to, dude, imagine not being able to fit in the door.
What's the fun?
Yeah, you're not being able to walk your phone.
Imagine me and
that
Jazzy.
joke is
No, I'm not funny.
Dude, I know
I'm
Jazzy.
hilarious.
I know who Jazzy is. Jazzy.
Jazzy?
You know who she's a little bit? Yeah, the one she's good.
You know, yesterday,
Hurts.
somebody said,
What's your highlighter?
somebody threw a highlight of me, said I could keep it. That was the highlight of my day.
What happened? What happened?
Yeah,
Why don't you have a Twitch?
I do have a Twitch.
What is it?
Why?
Drake's RJ Time. Wait, what? Let me see that. Dog water.
Bro, Braden Smith joined.
I'm getting this.
I love Brady.
Is that you?
Brady's my neighbor. That? Why would you ever buy that?
Yeah, that's nothing to me. Well, that's my mom's.
That was a good one.
Maybe too. I feel
Brody, Brody leave. Brody goes, Daddy RJ.
most likely.
Lance.
Or a car.
Huh? Which one? Lance Fresh?
Yeah. No,
Guys.
I'm gonna be driving soon.
Guys, cut out the phone.
Yo, for real.
What is that big thing?
Don't you need a booster seat if you're
No.
not sure how you...
Don't you need a toothbrush?
Yes, I'm streaming later, yes.
Um,
Yes.
Okay, some new feed.
Lance Drips.
Cap, half your class is not here, what happened?
I think they
Did they change the
they probably got COVID.
Yes.
They got
Streaming
COVID.
Madden. I'm clapping Drake and Madden later. They're cut.
Yeah, don't worry, I'm not
I'm doing the Impossible Quiz Saturday too.
Drake.
I'm doing the Impossible Quiz Saturday. I'm streaming it.
You should turn on the news.
Huh?
What do you look at that? It's like a toothbrush,
You have to do it.
or you just don't have one.
What happened to
Jackson?
Mhm.
A weight fell on his head.
Oh yeah, that weight did
Whenever
smash his
Cole Morgan was
head.
doing the push press, he was like,
Keegan's not
Who?
here.
like man's was
Morgan?
like dropping on his head.
I can believe that.
Never mind.
I want to squat.
Same.
We're doing speedway.
Nah.
I hope we do like competitive today.
We're doing speedway.
Yeah.
For athletics.
I'm not trying to do that. I beat Brendan in
Are
our
you doing
competitive
lunges?
push-up challenge.
No, you didn't.
I
Wait,
see
when
what
we
you-
went to the air,
We did
I
lunges,
Okay.
squats.
Okay, but I did it in the push-up challenge.
Y'all did
I went
speedway?
all the way. My face was touching the ground.
That's what I did.
We just did lunges.
Oh yeah, they did lead complex.
Yeah, no,
Whatever.
it was
We have to do this.
Caffrey.
Cashew.
Yes.
Matthew Merrick
On the bear.
Oh my
I
god.
told him to eat a
I'm
sandwich.
so bored.
I went and told Matthew and Matthew.
Where is it?
Still popping around too. Let's see, Mr. Badgett,
What's up?
you can have a seat right here in front of me on this desk.
I would gladly.
Oh god. Oh shoot,
Now, before we get started, you got your cell phone all turned off. Got it all tucked away, right? Another train wreck like we had yesterday.
In your backpack.
I didn't think.
for real.
Okay, that would be, wouldn't it be horrible? Yes, sir.
Can I look at this stuff right here?
Yes, sir. Right. Now, that comes down to Mr. Goodman. If you take one, it's not gonna be appreciative, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Same thing, you got your cell phone turned off, tucked away, no need for it today, right?
It's not turned off, but it's in my pocket.
You need to get it turned off, sir, that way you don't have any, needs to be turned off. You know school rules, needs to be turned off, you gotta be any reason to get it out, if it's turned off. Let me see you turn it off, put it back in your pocket, backpack, anything like that, that way you're not tempted to get it out. Turn it all the way off. Thank you, now put it in your backpack, that way you're not tempted to get it out, that
Does this
we
mean that I
would
don't
have
have
another
to
train wreck.
Does this mean I don't have to have my hand in
I'm
my
Blake. I'm Blake.
Yeah, that's part of it, yeah, yeah. You can do that, that way we
What, I
can
have
see
to?
it. Not now,
Oh, okay.
just stuff out of your backpack. Now we have no need to have anything.
Don't worry, I don't have it.
All right, let's see. Now, Mr. Duncan,
Hey, I'll be good. I'll be
you'll be
good.
so kind
I'll be
as to
good
move
today.
right up over here. I would be very appreciative.
By the back here.
I don't have it.
Did you move because you don't want to be in a stream?
And then last but not least, Mr. Goodrich, if you'll please join the two of them, I sure be appreciative.
Yes, sir.
How come I have to move today? I didn't move yesterday.
Look, late sergeant.
God, let us in here.
Look at. I put my phone in my bag.
Yes, you know we don't. If you put yourself away, you got it all turned off, right?
Yep.
Absolutely. If you have your cell phone turned off, you have to see where we can lock it. Have your cell phone turned off, tucked away where there's no need for you to grab it.
Yeah.
Okay, now that we're all set. Wonderful. Outstanding. See how much easier that is.
Great shirt.
How much more pleasant.
Guess what I get to go on
All right.
Tuesday.
Now, today, we're going a little further out and a little farther down the road, going to a little place called Kennedy Space Center.
Huh?
Where's
Where's that, Cal?
And little Kennedy Space Center is.
Where's that?
Where's that?
What are you
Duncan?
doing this in
That's in Houston, Texas.
No,
that's in
not the
Johnson
Space
Space
Center.
I hate this
Are you
person.
even listening?
Actually, a couple miles outside of, actually it's probably about a 10, 15 mile trip outside of Miami, Florida.
Yeah, I've been there.
Yes, I'm in school live right now. Yes, sir. You know what's goody? Yo, chat be popping, no chat.
Now, let me give you the ground rules of engagement for this, especially for you, Mr. Goodman.
Well, actually, I actually need to say something.
If it's not
It's about-
pertaining,
It's
it's
about the,
not pertaining to exactly what I'm fixing to discuss.
Yo, I'm in
it's about
school.
the Johnson Space
My friends just got trouble.
What about Johnson Space Center?
You know that big long rocket in like the warehouse?
The Scarlet 9.
The Saturn night. The Scarlet.
Okay. Alright, ground rules for today's engagement are: 1, watch the video. 2, you don't have to discuss anything, we'll discuss at the end. 3, you don't need to discuss anything with your neighbors. 4, for the rest of you, the same rules of engagement that these four gentlemen just got through getting apply as well. So if you feel a burning need to get your cell phone out or act like an idiot, Mr. McMillan, I will not send you out in the hall this time, Mr. McMillan, since this is my last day with you and your last day with me, maybe, unless you're taking something else.
I have robotics.
Oh, you have robotics.
Oh,
Okay,
shoot.
then I'll send-
Oh well.
We'll send you straight down to Mr. Douglas. Mr. Douglas can discuss it. And I'll be totally out of it. Yes, sir.
Can I turn my phone off?
Better turn it off now, yes, sir. Turn it off, if you think you burning desire to have in your hot little hand, put it in your backpack, we have no need for it.
I always have a burning need.
Outstanding. Yes, sir.
How long is the video gonna last?
I have no idea, I think about 25, 30 minutes.
Oh.
That's long.
That's a long time.
Okay, last few rules of engagement. 1, there are no bathroom trips, there's no water trips.
Oh, that sucks.
We're not going anywhere, just like we would on a real honest to goodness, honest to goodness field trip.
I need to be.
Because we keep everybody in nice little bubbles, that way everybody has a nice fun filled day. Yes, sir.
Can I turn the light off?
Yes, sir, you are the long man, please.
Uh-huh.
I need to be hydrated, Cap.
Oh, I think you'll be just fine. Takes 3 days out water, 21 days out food. We're just talking about 25 minutes. I think you'll be just fine right now.
Oh.
Oh God, I just looked at her. Oh God, I'm the goat. Oh, it's a YouTube video, Cap?
It's a 25-minute video.
Cap, I'm getting some Arizona.
Cap, is that 4K?
It's good. That's the last comment you need to give me. That's something directly pertaining to the video.
I got
No, you
Coming
don't.
up, we travel beyond the parks in Orlando and head to a very special place on the Florida coast, the Kennedy Space Center.
That's Disneyland.
That's Disneyland, Cap.
Been there.
Same.
Disney presents Beyond the Kingdom.
Bro, this is blind control. You see your boy? I'll put it right there.
Hello everyone and welcome to this Sunday's main show of Beyond the Kingdoms. Like always, I'm your host David, and today we're going to do something very special. I'll be sharing with you my full guide to the Kennedy Space Center on Cape Canaveral. If you've ever been curious what a visit to the complex is like, then you're in for a big treat today. Because this place has a lot to see and do, whether you're a big space nut or traveling with little ones and want something more educational sprinkled with some fun. So let's not waste any more time and jump right in to today's episode.
Same.
The Kennedy Space Center is located on Merritt Island, about 55 miles east of Orlando. It was first formed in 1962, when construction began on the complex, about 4 years after the official formation of NASA. Before this point, missions and launches were conducted at what is now referred to as the Cape Canaveral Air Force Station. Because of President John F. Kennedy's declaration that America would travel to the moon by the end of the decade, Lyndon B. Johnson had the Space Center named in his honor after he was assassinated in 1963. Now, the actual visitor complex opened a couple of years later in 1967. It is now home to several exhibits and attractions that cover the history of American space travel and gives guests an up-close look at where NASA is headed next. Today, there are about 12 main exhibits to experience at the Space Center, along with several different bus tours that take you to various launch sites, an IMAX theater, and the astronaut training experience, for those who want to enjoy a more hands-on approach to space travel. In terms of dining, Kennedy Space Center features 7 different quick-service restaurants where you can enjoy a meal while touring the facilities. But something extra special is the Dine with an Astronaut experience. And finally, if you're a shopaholic, you're in luck, because there is a tremendous amount of merchandise to browse while visiting this complex. In fact, the main space shop sells the largest number of space-related gifts in the world. There's everything from books and posters to collectible items, toys, and of course, apparel. In today's guide, I'm going to highlight 3 main exhibits that are most worth your time. If you don't know a lot about American space travel, these 3 experiences will give you a complete look. From our first human spaceflight program, Project Mercury, to the Apollo missions to the moon, and the Space Shuttle program. And you'll even get a glimpse into the future with the SLS rocket. But to start, we're going to head inside the Heroes and Legends building located at the very entrance to the complex, home to some early spaceflight artifacts and the Astronaut Hall of Fame. In October of 1957, the Russians launched Sputnik into Earth's orbit. Americans were paranoid and surprised that the Russians managed to be the first to send a satellite into the atmosphere. This sparked the official start of the space race. The Americans quickly reacted by creating NASA and began developing Project Mercury. While the Americans were not the first to be in space, The entire goal of Project Mercury was to get someone in Earth's orbit and safely return them to Earth. Our first American in space was Alan Shepard on Mercury Redstone 3, also known as Freedom 7. He managed to conduct a 15-minute suborbital flight above the Earth and prove that humans could withstand the G-forces of spaceflight and re-entry. And about a year later, John Glenn became the first American to completely orbit the Earth on the Mercury Atlas 6, or Friendship 7. Glenn successfully orbited the Earth 3 times before splashdown in the mid-Atlantic Ocean. There were 7 manned missions part of Project Mercury, and each spacecraft was named with the number 7 in honor of these first set of American astronauts. But you must not forget that there were thousands of other people working behind them to help make this possible. It would later be the stepping stones to Project Gemini, where each spacecraft could hold 2 astronauts, and the goal was to perfect docking maneuvers, something that would be essential for moving forward with the Apollo missions to the moon. And inside the Heroes and Legends building, you'll get a better look at these early missions. Your experience will begin in a pre-show and a 4D multi-sensory movie that explores what inspired these first few astronauts to embark on their brave journeys. After the film, you'll get to see a model of the Mercury Redstone rocket that took Shepard and Glenn into orbit. And you'll get to see the Gemini 9A capsule, where one of our astronauts attempted to maneuver a spacewalk. The exhibits here are divided into different characteristics that define what NASA considers a hero. And all of this leads to the official Astronaut Hall of Fame, where men and women are forever remembered as heroes in spaceflight. At the start, you will of course see a statue saluting Alan Shepard, and along the walls you'll find all the inductees to the Hall of Fame. From obvious people such as Neil Armstrong, the first man to walk on the moon, to Sally Ride, America's first woman in space, who was part of one of the space shuttle missions on the Challenger. And just outside the building, you'll find the Rocket Garden, a beautiful display of NASA's early rockets, from the Juno 1, which sent America's first satellite into space, to the Saturn 1B. This was the type of rocket used for Apollo 7, which was the first manned mission, part of the Apollo program. There are free guided tours of the Rocket Garden every day, and they usually take place up to 5 times a day. Now across this main courtyard, you'll find the entrance to the KSC bus tours. All tickets to the Kennedy Space Center include the standard bus tour. For those of you who want a more detailed tour, you can purchase extra add-ons starting from $25 for adults and $19 for kids. There is the KSC Explorer bus tour, which gives you access to more restricted areas, and the Cape Canaveral Early Space Tour. This one takes you to various historic launch sites used for the earlier missions I mentioned before. But today, I'm going to focus on the basic bus tour included in your ticket. Every day from about 9 a.m. to about 3 hours before closing time, you can hop aboard a bus and tour the vehicle assembly building, the main launch sites used today, and end at the Apollo Saturn V companies. And here are some highlights of what you'll see on the tour. The Vehicle Assembly Building, or VAB, is a towering 526 feet tall, and it was built in 1966. Its main purpose was to assemble and house the massive Saturn V rocket that was used for the Apollo missions. It was later used for the Space Shuttle program and is still used today for current missions taking place. Now the doors on the side of the building measure over 400 feet tall. They are the largest doors on Earth and take a full 45 minutes to open and close. Once a spacecraft is put together here, it makes its way to the launch pad with the help of the crawler. This massive transport vehicle only sits about 25 feet off the ground and moves at the great rate of just 1 mile an hour. In fact, it can take up to 5 hours for this vehicle to move from the assembly building to the launch pad. If you're lucky, you'll get to tour around Launch Complex 39A and 39B. Both were used for the Apollo and Space Shuttle missions. And today, both of them are also used for missions with SpaceX and Boeing. In fact, when NASA returns to the moon by 2024, this is exactly where the new rockets will blast off from.
So it's 10:30 on a Wednesday, and apparently I've sold close to $3,000 in sales on Amazon already. Yep.
At the end of your bus tour, you'll be dropped off at the Apollo Saturn V Center, which, as the name suggests, focuses on America's mission to the moon. On December 28, 1968, Jim Lovell and his crew boarded the Saturn V rocket before blasting off into space. This was the first manned crew aboard this enormous new rocket, and they would become the first to leave Earth's orbit and circle around the moon. At the start of the Saturn V Center, you'll witness the actual room and console views for this launch in the firing room. After this short pre-show, you'll get to see the rocket itself, which sprawls over 360 feet long. You'll notice that the rocket is broken up into pieces to show you the different phases during the initial launch sequence. And along the right side of the building, you'll see the various insignias used for each Apollo mission. There are free guided tours of the Saturn V rocket inside this building, and they take place up to 5 times a day. Just look for a sign right as you exit the firing room theater and at the base of the rocket. And towards the very back of the building, you must stop by the Lunar Theater to witness a reenactment of the Apollo 11 moon landing with Neil Armstrong.
At the foot of the ladder, the lamp heads are only depressed in the surface about 1 or 2 inches, although the surface appears to be very, very fine grained as you get close to it. It's almost like a powder. That's 1 small step for man,
Upon exiting the theater, you'll step inside the Treasures Gallery, where you can see a mixture of real spacesuits used for the missions, moon rocks, and more. But before leaving the Apollo Saturn V Center, it is also worth a stop at a special memorial paying tribute to the astronauts of Apollo 1. On January 27, 1967, during a routine test, a fire broke out inside the command module. And astronauts Gus Grissom, Edward White, and Roger Chaffee were trapped inside when the hatch door wouldn't open. It was a dark day in American history, and this caused the entire team of engineers to relook at every aspect of the spacecraft before another team of humans would be inside. Inside this exhibit, you'll see tributes to all three men. And you'll see the redesigned hatch door that was then implemented after Apollo 1. As I stated in my top tips video, I recommend doing this bus tour and visiting the Apollo Center first thing. Mainly because you can spend a good 2.5 hours doing all of this. You can then board a bus again and head back to the main complex. This would be a good time to grab some lunch at the Orbit Cafe, which is the complex's largest restaurant, or even catch an IMAX movie. Now there are different smaller exhibits in this area and various presentations. It's best to check your times guide when you first arrive at the complex to plan out your day. But a good finale to a visit at the Space Center is at the Shuttle Atlantis exhibit. This building opened back in 2013, and I think it's the best exhibit at Kennedy Space Center, mainly because kids and adults will really enjoy this one. When you first enter this massive building, you'll pass under a huge replica of the rockets that send the shuttle into space. And inside, you'll see the real Atlantis, now retired and on display for all to enjoy. The Space Shuttle program began in 1972 as a follow-up to the Apollo and Skylab programs. Its main goal was to build a space truck, if you will, to transport large payloads into space and eventually build a space station. The tricky part was that NASA was also trying to design a spacecraft that could be reusable. It was a tremendous design challenge. In the end, NASA built the shuttle, which was merely a glider. The large orange fuel rocket would function like previous rockets, and the two white solid rocket boosters would be reusable like the shuttle itself. And all 6 space shuttles carried out nearly 150 flights. I can't say it enough. The big reveal from the pre-show to the actual shuttle is awe-inspiring. And it's truly incredible to witness this in real life.
Yo, what the freak?
Bless you.
Oh, God.
I'm using the film.
But as some of you may remember, both the Challenger and Columbia experienced catastrophic failures in their lifetime. The Challenger was known for being the spacecraft that would take the first American woman and first African American into space. Like I said before, Sally Ride launched into space on June 18, 1983, and she was responsible for driving that giant robotic arm. Guy Bluford would later board the Challenger in August of that same year, and also work with the Canadian-built robotic arm. But in 1986, Challenger suffered from a fatal accident that killed all 7 crew members on board, including a teacher. Remains of both Challenger and Columbia can be found inside the special memorial at the Atlantis exhibit. Now, inside the Shuttle Atlantis building, you'll also find one of the very few attractions at the Kennedy Space Center, the Shuttle Launch Experience. This is something that kids will enjoy along with all the other playground areas inside this building. Inside, you'll strap into your own simulator and discover what it feels like to have all that power from the rocket behind you and blast off into space. It's a thrilling ride, and the perfect ending to a day at the Space Center. Now, all guests must be at least 44 inches tall to experience this. And you'll have to stow all of your belongings in the free lockers just outside the entrance to the ride. Hats, cameras, glasses, everything has to be put away. For those of you who don't want all the big thrills, you can also observe the experience from a separate location inside, while the rest of your group experiences the attraction. But this is not the end of the story. One of the reasons I wanted to share with you a guide to Kennedy Space Center is because we are on the brink of a brand new chapter in American space travel. SpaceX and Boeing are just 2 companies that are currently working alongside NASA to send Americans back into space and to the moon. The goal is to return to the moon by 2024, and it will be a dress rehearsal for longer missions such as a trip to Mars. Yes, we are living in a time where a trip to the red planet with humans is actually within reach. To get a taste of what's on the horizon, visit the NASA Now exhibit. You'll find this inside the IMAX building. Here you'll see models and samples of the latest spacecrafts that will launch from Cape Canaveral, like the SLS rocket. You'll also want to visit the Journey to Mars exhibit to get an idea of how we're going to travel to the red planet. And make sure you check out the Mars rover prototype. But sadly, folks, that brings us to the end of today's main show. A trip to the Kennedy Space Center can be a fun side trip from the other major attractions in Central Florida.
Sadly.
It's like a science museum on steroids.
For real.
And if you're visiting Central Florida for a long vacation, we're talking about 7 to 10 days, this is a great thing to do in between the theme parks. It's a nice mix of education with a sprinkle of fun for the whole family.
Cap, is
And
it still open because of
The
COVID?
surface of everything there is to see and do here.
Do what?
Is it still open because of COVID?
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Why was it planes? Because the astronaut died.
It's because it was probably from his past.
Yeah, it's still open.
Alright.
Yeah, and, oh shoot. And Johnson, Johnson Space Center too is open. Well,
I bet. I'm about to go.
Did anybody here go to Helena? Because we went to.
Yeah, most of the.
I went to NASA.
No, I was in Port Neches because I'm
I went to
with a friend.
NASA.
Yeah, we went to NASA.
Yes, sir.
I kind of have a situation with this one. Does time work different in space? Like on another planet, can 1 hour on that planet be a day here?
Oh, yeah.
Depends upon its rotation around the sun, so that's how we determine the day here.
What's Ferguson comes outside?
3 days to travel from the Earth to the moon. It doesn't feel like 3 days to the astronauts inside the shuttle.
Yes and no, they're still on time clock, they're just running on time clock from the Earth. So, what they experience is they experience the same amount of problems adjusting that people in Alaska adjust to. Yeah, you got Alaska, well, you're from Alaska, so you know what it's like to adjust to a 24-hour period.
Kind of, because
Kind of.
I left when I was 5, so I don't really remember.
You don't really remember much of it. Alaska, the unique thing about Alaska is its location creates it where there are two periods of the year where one period is almost 24 hours daylight. So it is midnight is like it is right
It
here.
only gets dark when the sun goes behind a mountain, that's the literally
That's it. And then the other part of it, if there's a reverse to that where it experiences almost 24 hours of darkness. In other words, there is no light. The only light you got is man-made. For the spaceship and somebody traveling to the moon on board the spaceship, it's pretty much the same thing because to get any light at all, you almost have to turn the spacecraft in towards the sun to get any light into it. At the same token, it's pretty much kind of facing away from the sun a lot, so it's almost dark inside. So really and truthfully, they would experience the same things you'd experience in Alaska. So, and the human body, we found out, just doesn't react well to that type of stuff. So the way you counteract that is a lot of the lighting in the capsules are engineered and built to be more like sunlight and not so much like a incandescent light bulb. And at the same token, there's actually a schedule that they keep them on where, okay, it's 9:30 at night, it's time for you guys to power stuff down, turn the lights off, go to bed. We'll give you a wake-up call at, say, 7 o'clock in the morning. They keep them on schedule like that where the human body doesn't get out of practice. It's on a schedule stays on it. So it's not really affecting you all that much.
Have you ever been there? Have you ever been to like a NASA?
Why
wouldn't you?
Yeah.
A lot of the schools we get to go to is, one of my first ones was actually a lot of fun. We went to it took us on a little bit more of a tour than the normal public got to go. We went by the vacuum chamber where they moved pieces of aircraft in and actually seal it up, and then some of the astronaut training actually put the astronauts in the vacuum chamber with the piece of equipment so that the astronauts learn what to do and what not to do should they have to do what they call extravehicular activity, which means they go outside the spacecraft. Once you leave the spacecraft, you're in basically a totally airless void. It's basically a vacuum. The little things that you don't want to do, rip your suit on something else would be a bad move, crack a glass, something like that, because your suit has to keep you alive. If you rip the suit, it loses all that pressurization and your blood then basically boils at a very quick rate. And boiling blood is just not going to be good for the body. With some of that, they test there. They test a lot of the spacecraft parts there at Johnson Space Center as well to see how they react. The unit I got to go to, which is really pretty cool, was a unit which they train. It's basically an old, it was a test unit they put out in the desert to see how people would react living isolated, secluded. It was basically an old lab. They brought back there, they cleaned it up, and basically do the same thing. They'll take a crew and to test their psychology and test to see how they work in space, because you can't just come home at the end of the day. Once you leave Earth and you go up there to space station, you may be looking at a year or so up there, isolated. So what they do is they actually try people out to this deal. It was actually pretty cool. You crawled up the ladder. They sealed you in, and basically you were sealed in. For us, they sealed us in on pretty close to an hour. We were sealed in. The lights around it, they dimmed the lights all the way down, basically black or nothing. And they got a crew that sits out there and mans it 24 hours a day with a computer system, and they simulate different problems and being woke up and putting astronauts to bed. And it was really pretty cool. We asked him, how many times have you ever seen somebody freak out? He says, we have a lot of people that think they can make it. He said, we've had some freak out as much as a month. After a month being in there isolated, he said they can't handle it. He said that's usually, we're usually one of the first stops to start sorting out who can actually go to the space station, who can't because of the amount of time you're isolated. Yes, sir.
Which space station is better, the one in Florida or the one in Texas?
They're both about the same. The Florida one has a lot more of the equipment that they use. You can actually see it on that bus tour. I went over to Launch Pad 39B, which they had at that point in time, they had kind of abandoned. They were doing some work on it. It was pretty cool to go up in it and look around and see a lot of steel hanging around it. The launch pad complex where they actually fired the rocket is not that far from the rocket. The simulation of that was almost definite. I could not imagine being in that building, because when you walk in, it's really bright, sunshiny day. Whenever they got ready to fire a rocket, they had a set of blast doors that basically closed over the windows and stuff. And you're basically in a concrete bunker. Of course, you got all these, Capcom systems go, ignition systems go. They go up to all these systems, and then on cue, when you get down that last deal, the roar of the Saturn V from launch was almost deafening. Matter of fact, you could not hear people talking for about 4 or 5 minutes after the rocket had actually taken off. It was that deafening inside the building.
Dang, Coach. You can't hear for 4 minutes?
About 3 or 4 minutes.
Dang, Coach.
It was that deafening inside the
Wow.
building. They had it dialed up to the same amount of noise that you would hear with that Saturn V launch. When you lit those 5 big F1 engines, it really was deafening.
So I would be fully deaf.
Bro, what kind of mouse is that? Who's got the RGB?
The other one, Johnson Space Center over in Houston, I got there. You can, if you'll basically venture off at Johnson Space Center, they now opened up the zero gravity training pool, which is a pretty cool pool. It's almost 60 foot deep. It's almost 60 foot deep and pretty close, about 300 foot long. It's probably one of the world's largest indoor pools.
300 feet long?
It's indoors.
Yeah. Indoors?
It's fully indoors. They'll allow you, they got an observation deck now. You can go up there, and there are a lot of days that they're testing, that they're doing training with the astronauts. It's pretty cool. They actually got outside the building, they got different pieces of the space station. And they got actually some of the other pieces of some of the other spacecraft, like they got a mock-up of the new Starliner, they got a mock-up of Dragon X there, which was last year. And they had the space station, they had those pieces sunk in the pool. And they had the astronauts down in the pool